Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of HerSpace Unscripted. Today's episode, I'm so excited to have a woman that is really just changing the game in medicine when it comes to understanding women. I'm someone who has struggled a lot with different health things. The crazy part is that everyone just keeps telling me it was normal until now. So I'm so excited to have Ms. Sheila Burgess on our podcast today. Welcome, Ms. Sheila.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, so as I mentioned, you are someone who is really just changing what quote unquote is normal for women, right? Like as I've grown and as I don't like to use the word aged, but it's happening. I've had a lot of changes in my body. And I think that the most frustrating thing is that most times the doctor tells me I'm fine.
Everything is normal.
Yes, yes. So before we get started on the amazing things you do, I always start with tell us a little bit about you.
Okay. About me beyond my title or beyond being a provider here. I am a mother. I have 2 stepkids now and 3 wonderful kids, 2 doodles at home. So they keep me really busy. The kids are older, so this is a different time, a different phase in my life. And I divorced. I've always lived in Las Cruces, so this is a big community, and I was always known as Sheila Bardwell. So we were married for 23 years. So this is now my second life, is what I call it, and so that's been interesting. Starting over, starting new, starting fresh with somebody new, not from here. It's a different culture, of course, here, and I'm. I'll say I'm an eternal learner, so I'm constantly learning. I don't ever stop, and that just drives my curiosity. I'm always curious.
Yeah, no, I love that, which explains why you are so connected in all of those spaces. But I want to ask you, though, before we start talking about your profession, because this is a space that we create for women, and that is a big change in your life that you experienced, and 23 years of marriage to someone and you guys really, you develop your life together, right? As Correct. You knew it in that space. And then that kind of ends and this next thing begins. And how was that?
It was difficult, but also something that happens to us, especially when we get with somebody very young. I always say your body will tell you when things are complete. And I think there's a phase that says, or some kind of phrase that says, you will always marry your unfinished business. And when that was finished, you just kind of knew it. So it wasn't really anything too hurtful. We discussed it. We separated. And, he still lives in town. And we've done really good with making sure the kids feel loved and important. And we waited till they were older.
Yeah. No, and I think that I love that you say that because that's something I believe, and a lot of people kind of look at me sideways for, but I'm like, I truly believe that we are, well, at least we're supposed to, if we're doing life right, we become so many different versions of ourselves.
Correct. Yes.
And I think it is really hard, not impossible, but really hard to be with somebody for decades on decades and decades because you genuinely have to fall in love with the new versions of each other.
Correct.
Over and over and over again. And falling in love is hard at one time, yes. But to continue to do that with the same person for, decade after decade, version after version of each other, that is really hard to do.
It is. And we did a really good job of it. And, we're both in spaces right now where he has a new partner that matches what he's doing, and I have one that matches what I'm doing, and it's just, it's just a beautiful world. It works out the way it's supposed to.
Yeah, no, exactly that, right? It's the way it's supposed to.
Correct.
And I think a lot of times it's the holding on that ends up screwing us up the most. It's like we try to make something work that just it's over and it's not working, and it, and then I think that's when it becomes even more like of a bitter, ugly thing, if, when you try to hold on to something that's just, we know we've outgrown.
Sure. And we're told, we're taught that we're supposed to overcome those challenges and stick with it. And it wasn't until I would say it's like kind of a midlife crisis where you really just have to let your last life just dissolve completely to make your new version of yourself. And I think that's where it was all at. Yeah. Completely. I just feel like I'm a different person now.
Yeah. And I want to kind of point out what you just said. So you said, we're taught to, fight through those challenges. And yes and no, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like
yes.
There are challenges that as a couple you're going to face and that you are supposed to, it's you and them against the world, right? Mm-hmm. And that's how it is. And that's how it should be. And you should be navigating those. But I think it's a different point you reach. When we're talking about this, it's really something you just know. It's something you just feel because you both are so different. Yes. It's not necessarily lifing anymore. Mm-hmm. It's more like life is lifing, and neither one of us see it the same anymore. We're not in it the same anymore. And so it's a different kind of something that I genuinely don't think you can overcome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you see a lot of people that do. And they're miserable, and sometimes they fall back in love later in life, and it's great. But everyone is different, and everyone's journey is different.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we're in this new phase, mm-hmm. and I think you mentioned to me it's crow phase. What is crow phase?
So we always look at different, in women, we look at, the maiden phase, the mother phase, and then your last phase is the crow phase. And what that is that crones, I like to say it crow because of the wisdom that brings to the area. But the crone phase is, when you're done having children, mm-hmm. When you're not able to have children anymore, just like we have different phases in life, I think those need to be celebrated. So, when our young girls first have their period, we usually kind of put it under the rug and don't celebrate it, but that's starting their maiden phase. When we become mothers, our whole life is about the child. We sacrifice everything to make sure the child is happy. And then when your next phase in life, society doesn't like this phase. Older women are not important, but this is the phase where you're just like, the kids are done. Now I could start focusing on myself, and you bring so much wisdom to the community. I'm hoping that we change that culture of like older women, not being such important parts of society.
Yeah. And you know what? This may just be me and my perspective of it, but I think it's because that older woman stage is a stage that most people don't like, especially men. They don't like it because we become so beautifully selfish. Mm-hmm. Beautifully selfish. We've learned so much through our experiences that we don't put up with shit anymore. We now speak when we feel we need to speak. We now show up the way that we want to show up. And like you said, for the longest time, my entire being is my kids, because I'm still in that phase, right? I still have littles. I still have my son still 6, my daughter's about to be 17. And so I'm still in that middle one. I'm leaning towards the showing up as a little more selfishly, right? But I am still, very focused on my children. But what I have a lot of amazing women around me that are in that crow phase that is just so beautiful. But I also think that might be one of the reasons society kind of looks at it a little, because it's finally the phase where the women are selfishly living their life, mm-hmm. and it's beautiful to me, but I think it kind of rubs people the wrong way.
Yeah, and they question everything, so we don't fall into the norms anymore.
Yeah. So is that what led you to being more curious, I guess we would say, or like deep diving more into what you practice?
Absolutely. That's part of it. Also, yeah, you question everything. I always say the first half of your life, you are following the rules. You are doing what people tell you to do. And that's part of, being human. We are told to be a certain way. We are told, the nice house with the picket fence is what we strive for. And then when we get to a point, we think, no, the bigger house, the more chores I have to do. So everything kind of becomes like, you start questioning, like, wait, this wasn't my dream. This was instilled in me. And yeah, at that phase, I did a lot of journey work. I did a lot of deep healing, shadow work. I mean, question everything. I always say my midlife crisis was a sleeve, not a sports car. But it's the stuff that has gone on in my life. And it's just, my mother tells me all the time, like, how is that going to look when you're older? And I was like, well, I'm older now. But when I see this on older people, I always think, well, you've lived.
They lived.
Yeah.
They lived.
You had some fun.
Yes, exactly.
Yes. And I think it's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
But before, I always thought, well, you can't be a professional with tattoos. You can't be this with this. We are told to think a certain way. And then you start pushing back, at this phase.
Yeah. So one of your many beautiful hats is that you are a practitioner. Mm-hmm. You own Be Well.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about that, because it wasn't the first time you've been in practice, but it is a different way that you're showing up in practice.
Correct. Yeah. So yeah, I've been in medicine now for, well over 20 years, actually. I was at the hospitals for 20 years. Then, I don't know if you wanted to discuss that. Then when COVID hit, this is when I started switching the way that I think about everything. We're pushed to see as many patients as we can a day. So I was probably seeing anywhere between 35 to 45 a day, about 7-minute appointments. And at that time, what we have to do is upsell or upbill. So everything that somebody comes in with, you have to, 1, diagnose it, 2, treat it. So every diagnosis needs a first-line therapy. A first-line therapy is always a pharmaceutical. And so if you're going to diagnose it, you have to show that you treat it. So most of my patients had about 35 to 40 different medications. So most of and these were older patients. And so you're giving these medications, but a lot of these medications have side effects. So then you're giving meds to the side effects, and it's this continuous thing, and none of them were feeling good. Then COVID hit. I went to a very hard-hitting hospital in South Brooklyn. It was NYU. And, when I first got there were trailers of bodies in the front. And, for a virus that was a 98.6 survival rate at this time, it just seemed very strange, like something was going on. But when you went in there, it was like a third world country. This hospital was doing the best they could with, the technology that we have. And I'll say modern medicine is the best thing if you have an acute issue. You got hit by a truck or you're having an MI. But something like this that we're just not prepared for, it falls apart. And I think we did a disservice to patients at that time. So anyone that looked COVID-like, glass-like appearance in the lungs, they were admitted into, the COVID units and eventually got COVID. But I don't think it really had much to do with the virus, but more about the culture of how we were treating. And so lots of deaths and lots of money behind those deaths. And so whenever I got back from that, there was, I didn't feel anything. I had to go through that period of just like, I didn't have any feelings, no sadness, no happiness, no joy. I was just blunt. And then that's whenever I got into journey work. And my first journey, and just so I could feel something, just kind of showed me we're doing it all wrong. That everything that we need is in the environment that surrounds us. All the medicine It doesn't need to be made in labs in synthetic forms. Everything that we need surrounds us. And then that's whenever I got into functional medicine, because, modern medicine wants to find diseases, not dysfunction. And really the body is just so dysfunctional, and not because of what people are doing. It's more the environment. We don't have real food. Our soil is so overturned, it doesn't have the nutrients that it needs. We have all these endocrine disruptors now. So, our water has here we have lots of cadmium in our water, lots of metals, lots of microplastics, BPAs, parabens, pesticides here. And these are all leading to disruption of the system. And I'll say the system is hormones. So we have a whole healthcare system that does everything except the system itself.
Yeah.
We look at everything else.
Yeah.
We have cardiology, neurology, dermatology. We have every single thing, except even our endocrinologists aren't looking at the system itself. They're looking at specific disease.
Yeah. And to be clear,
missing
right,
it.
hormones are everybody. We're not just talking about women, because I know that that's a big thing too,
Yes.
right? You hear hormones and everybody immediately says women. And
Correct.
although, yes, we tend to have a lot more issues with our hormones as we age and as we change and as our body changes from the time when we're young, we're not the only ones that should be looking at that and navigating those.
Correct. No, and it's every being. Hormones are just signals. Hormones are the messengers. They control the whole body. So I like to say we are our hormones. Whatever the hormones are doing, they're controlling us. So it's really important that we look at those. And you just talked about everybody. So men in particular, we have our 20-year-olds that should be coming in with testosterones, above 900. And now today they're coming in like 100s, 200s. And you'll see it. Our poor men, they get the hips, they get the breast tissue, more adipose tissue, and it's nothing that they're doing. It's the environment. And then our women too are having more of the PCOS issues, higher testosterone because of what happens with our inner ovaries. And so they're getting the hair growth and the weight gain, the cystic acne. So it's very, it's very confusing for everyone, because, when we're controlled by these hormones and the signals are going off to people thinking I have to eat sugar. Like if I don't eat sugar, I'm crashing. I have to do this. I don't have any energy to get off the couch today because the hormones are unbalanced. It has nothing to do with you being lazy. And I say lazy does not exist. It has to do with hormones.
Yeah. No, and I love that you say that, because I've gone through many phases like that where I've had to be like, okay, hold on. Like, your body, because and that's the fun part too, is women have so many different phases that we go through in a month's time.
Yes. Yes.
Every month, that I've had to learn to be gracious, give myself more grace, because I'm starting to learn those phases, and I'm starting to understand, especially because I'm a gym girl. I love to go to the gym, and you lift so heavy during certain phases.
Correct.
You can't lift crap during other phases. You can't get off the couch during some phases, right? And I've had to be like, you're not being lazy. It's just the phase that you're in. So how do we navigate that, though?
Yeah.
Especially when the doctors are telling us there's nothing wrong with us.
Yes. So I'll tell you those phases. So say you just have that, you're in, you're about to menstruate and everything is kind of closing down. So you're just kind of like, I just don't want to get up. You're bloated, you're irritable.
I call it my 10-day window.
Yes. So that's the time that you want to go inward and journal, do those things that, that you don't get to do all the other time, because the energy is going to return. But that also has to do a lot with our decline of progesterone at that time as well. And progesterone is a really beautiful hormone. It's our calming hormone. It keeps us sleeping at night. It brings our anxiety down. It helps with our vaginal lubrication, sex drive, very cardiovascular protective. It does a lot of different things. So progesterone, when it declines, really will make you feel those PMS kind of symptoms, irritability, anxiety, insomnia, those kind of things. So, I tell women all the time, natural progesterone, can be better than any benzo, Ativan or Xanax. Go home, take a couple, go to sleep. Like you'll feel so much better when you wake up in the morning.
Yeah. No, and I did, like I said, my new doctor's really, I think she aligns a little bit with how you function. And I'm still coming to see you, by the way, because it's not complete. She doesn't do complete functional medicine like you, which is what I'm really interested in learning more about. But she was the first step to me realizing that, like, okay, there really is something wrong. I'm not making it up. It's not in my head. I literally had a doctor tell me that he's convinced that it's in my head, which was the last time I ever saw that man. But, when you start, because now I do 10 to 14 day progesterone in my 10-day window because I was crashing so bad. And she's the first one, by the way, even though I had been saying for a very long time that something was wrong, the first one to ever test my hormones.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we're seeing a shift in that. So hopefully, definitely with women doctors, because we go through it. So we know what that feels like. And I had the same thing happen. This is why I found functional medicine, is because I was at the hospital at this time, but I did about 6 years of not knowing what was going on. This brain fog that was so thick that I'd go into rooms and I'd be like, wait, what was I doing in here? And then just making sure I was giving the right medications, rechecking them, and not because I was, thinking that I was giving the wrong thing, but my brain fog was so messed up. So I would be like, am I in the right patient's room? Is this the right medication? Am I going to cause an error? It was so thick, and it took a long time, but at that time I went to Dallas because we didn't have anyone here, and found all the answers. And that was after 3 surgeries too. I was bleeding a lot. Again, that was lack of progesterone. So my estrogen would get really high. I had incontinence. So when I'd run, I had 3 kids. So when I'd run, the muscles were working fine, but around mile 2, they would just slowly start giving up. So I'd have to wear a pad because I'd just start peeing on myself.
Oh my God, me too. And they have been telling me that since my first child, which was 22. So we won't say how long ago that was, but it was a really long time ago. But yes, and just recently in the last month, I was given a medication that is, because I was diagnosed with overactive bladder finally. Gave this little tiny pill that I take one. I can do everything now.
Yes.
I can function. I can run. I can lift. I can jump. I'm on the trampoline with my son, right? And honestly, I'm low-key pissed because I'm like, I've been living like this for this whole time. And literally everybody just like, well, you had kids.
Correct.
You had kids.
So that's all you say. You have kids. And you can have a surgery.
Yes.
So the surgery doesn't fix the underlying issue. Yes, it's going to fix the incontinence, but there's a lot of other side effects that can happen with the bladder sling, the mesh issues. You probably see all the lawsuits on commercials all the time. It's a huge thing to get the mesh because your body can reject it and build scar tissue around it and cause a lot of other issues. But that was all we were told, right? That. If it's really that bad, get the surgery. And it doesn't treat the underlying issue anyways. It doesn't treat the hormonal fluctuations. And after we lose that progesterone around age 35, then things start happening. So many different things. Yeah. So the brain fog is worse. It's... we can't sleep very good. The incontinence, if you've had kids, all this other stuff. And it just has to do with the hormones, not so much the laxicity or not so much, anything else that we're doing. It just all hormonal control. Yeah.
No, I love that you say that because, like I said, I'm finally in the tail end of trying to understand all those things, and I'm being educated on those things, and I'm because I'm talking. Go to pelvic floor therapy, do all, and nothing helped, nothing, because I'm like, yes, and it's extremely frustrating, and so. You mentioned earlier there's some things that we should be doing, or there's what are the things that you could tell the women that are listening right now that we could do in our daily changes or daily life, or something that we can move to right now to just better our life?
Okay, yeah. Well, I always say get your labs tested and do a full like functional medicine. If you don't have insurance, function.com can do all of it for you. They can even do the heavy metal testing. They can do the methylation testing. They can do the autoimmune, Hashimoto's, thyroiditis, any of those kind of things. But yeah, if you just get a functional medicine base, then you can actually look for root causes. The other thing I did say, like, it doesn't really have to do with laxicity. What I mean is that's not the only issue. So Kegels are so important. I always put a K on my car so I could remember, do Kegels while you're driving. Like they are really important. You know, we work out all of our bodies. That's usually an area we forget though. And or the Von Wall balls. I mean, those are fun. If you wear them during the day, you have to keep them in all day. Like, and now they have like really fun toys that you can buy, like even on Amazon. They're just inserts, and then you're actually playing with your phone, and you're just trying to.
I've seen that.
They're so much fun.
It's like a video game, huh?
Yes.
Like on an app. Oh my gosh, I've seen that.
and it gets really hard at the beginning. You're like, oh, this is nothing. But then when you have to like keep it like going up over like things, you're just it gets really fun. And I think, yes, every woman probably needs this in her life. And
yeah. No, I love that. But I also love that, like you kind of mentioned, we never talked about any of these things, or like this, like a device like that would have been unheard of, you know, back in the day. And so I do think that a lot of things are changing as far as the conversation around women's bodies, particularly women in medicine, because I think that in my experience anyways, like women, they didn't really give a shit about us way back when. And so we were never, our bodies are so different that, you know, they didn't really include the changes that we have in our bodies when they were doing research, when they were developing a lot of techniques and a lot of medications, and you know, and we are just so different.
We are, yes. I always say women are more complicated. Men are easy. You give men testosterone, their diabetes go away, they lose weight, they feel great, they don't have any more cardiovascular issues.
Shit pisses me off.
They are very simple creatures. Women, we have so many little ways of doing things. We're very complex. But yeah, you were getting on to something that I did want to talk about. What was that last question that you said?
Well, I was just saying that, you know, we don't really have a lot of medicine or research or things that's been done in the past, really, that's around us, you know, like the research, they don't count our hormones when they were doing all of the, you know, research for this medication or the whatever, you know, so we are different. Yes. That stuff probably works very differently on us given whenever we're taking it.
Yeah. And then back in, you hear this all the time. They took the black box warning off of estrogen. And back in, you know, the 2000s, they did this thing where they put this black box warning of cancer. And it's a lot more complicated than that. So we do know that there's a link with cancer with estrogen receptor sites, progesterone receptor sites, but it has so much more to get into that. And in the functional medicine world, when we're looking at this, you know, women aren't really getting cancer when their hormones are good and balanced. It's not till after they lose those hormones. So you have receptor sites on every cell of your body for these hormones, especially in your brain. So every cell has this receptor site to bring in estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. And when they're not being filled with our natural hormones because our bodies stopped making them, then they are pulling in any estrogen-like chemical from the environment. So this is where the microplastics, the forever chemicals come in, and they will attach right into those sites. So there's two things that happens. They attach to those sites and our bodies uptake them like they're estrogen, or they attach those to those sites, and then we can't get those natural things like testosterone in for our young guys because all of those chemicals are attached to the receptor sites. And so finally, you know, just this year, they took off those black box warning, and they just scared a whole generation of women into doing any hormone therapy. So now we have women, you know, we have to go back years of telling women, no, this is very cancer preventative. This is very cardiovascular protective. We are only using bioidentical, very natural hormones to your body. And when you're not doing those hormones, your body is pulling in any extra thing that looks like these hormones. And can be really harsh on you. And we're making a lot of changes. A lot of hospitals are now, oncologists are now doing hormone therapy for their cancer patients, but we still have a lot that are locked into that old way of thinking that, hormones equal cancer. And that's going to take decades to change.
Yeah. Well, and then I think you mentioned it earlier because, a lot of people, because I've always told my kids, like, they're killing us through our food. I've just always believed that. But it's just, it sucks because it's like, unless I have a garden and some cows and stuff in the backyard, there's just no way to truly navigate it completely, our environment. So, what do we do?
Well, I will tell you something. The United States does things differently than other countries. So you probably have done this. Go to Italy or Spain and have pasta the whole time and lose 10 pounds and come back feeling great. Our environment here in the United States, we've done something. In the 90s, we started putting a man-made folate, which is folic acid, in all the grains. So all enriched flours have this folic acid. And now we have a huge portion of the population that has methylation issues, MTHFR. And this is something that we also check for, because for those women and men, they can't methylate, they can't break down this folic acid, so it accumulates in the body and it causes autoimmune cancer. It causes chronic inflammation. Chronic inflammation is what leads to all this chaos and then disease in the body. And so that started in the 90s, and since then we've seen a very high amount of lots of different things like autism, anxiety, cancer. Things like celiac disease are very, very linked to MTHFR. We're seeing this huge link. So that's one of the things that I say, even when you try to eat healthy and we're told this is how healthy looks like, we're fortifying things that people cannot methylate. And so we're just causing more issues.
No, exactly. And I love that you pointed out that was something that started happening in the 90s and just gradually has progressed, because I hear it all the time, like, well, I ate that when I was a kid and I didn't die. But it's not the same. It, in fact, is not the same. You look at the ingredients in something that we ate back then compared to now, and it's just, there's a whole bunch of shit on there that I can't even pronounce.
No. And even our chocolates are different. Everything is different. And it's because they find these quicker and less expensive ways of making food taste good. But it doesn't necessarily mean it's better for us, actually. We know it's not.
Yeah, exactly.
And so we have all this food that is not even real food. And so that's one of the big things is making sure that you're actually eating real food. And what does that look like to people? Like, do we even know anymore?
Well, I love that you said that too, because we were also talking about the increase in, depression, the increase in anxiety, the increase in just all of that. And I know that something we really wanted to mention today was, I know it's not, because in New Mexico, it's not legal, the mushroom method. I don't know what it's called professionally, but I just know in Arizona, there's a retreat thing there. But there's something that you do around that. What is it and what is it for?
Yes. So I'll start with telling the story of how I got into this. So I just kind of mentioned journey work to you before. But I had a niece who was 15 years old who struggled with suicidal ideation, anxiety, depression, very, very heavy depression. And she saw many providers here in Las Cruces. She was actually admitted a couple times to Mesilla Valley Psych Hospital. And put on more medication, up to 7 different medications at one time. And she got in her head that the only way out was suicide. And when she was 15, she took a bunch of pills and killed herself. And it wasn't her first attempt. And then her mother actually did the same, she was turning 16, so we had a celebration. And it was just too hard for the mother. So she ended up killing herself at that time as well. And so, my thought was there has to be a different way. Both of these young girls were on a lot of different medications, and I just feel like we failed them. And I know a lot of it was hormones, but also a lot of it is, psychological. We have to get into the mind. So we do a lot of biohacking. So whenever I talk about biohacking to the mind, it's harder, it's deeper to get into. So what we do at Be Well is ketamine assisted psychotherapy. It is legal in New Mexico. We use ketamine as a anesthesia medication. So you'll hear it for kids if they've had dental procedures. It's a very gentle anesthetic. We use it so it doesn't cause any kind of respiratory depression. And the way that we use it for journey work is we give less than what we do in anesthesia, but more than what we do for like a typical trochet, like a buccal melt. And we do it we'll do it IM, just because the way that it functions and hits them.
What's IM?
Intramuscularly,
Okay.
sorry. And when that medicine hits, what happens is that neuroplasticity in the brain opens up. Mm-hmm. So then there's certain things that we can kind of deal with a lot easier. I mean, during the experience, you don't know, it's a disassociate. So you don't know what's going on. Everyone kind of wakes up and says, that's the weirdest thing I've ever dealt with. And it's not meant to make sense of. What it's meant to do is open up that neuroplasticity. So now you see possibilities. Because we say what wires together fires together. So when your neuroplasticity is all jumbled up in your mind because you've been running from that tiger, there's no tiger there, but your brain still thinks there is. And you have so much anxiety and so much depression. And this is how the neuroplasticity is. So when you try to start doing things, you feel stuck. Mm-hmm. So for any woman or any like male that feels like so stuck, like there's no answers, this is what we usually recommend to them. So it's done with a CAP therapist, a provider. Usually we have like a medicine man in there too, doing like drumming and different stuff, because we really want to make it spiritual. And it's afterwards, this is just an experience. So I say the magic happens with the integration. Mm-hmm. So yes, you can go to Peru and do your ayahuasca, or Arizona and do the mushroom therapy. But if you don't have the integration afterwards, it just becomes an experience. Mm-hmm. And the integration is putting those pieces all together, not making sense of it, but saying, okay, now I can see what this is trying to tell me. And with a more open mindset, with that neuroplasticity open now. And it's such a beautiful thing. So we've had a lot of VA patients. One of the first ones I started with was a gentleman that came to me from a provider here, a therapist. And he came in and he had 3 bullets that he put. They were empty shells. And then the 4th one, he said, this one's mine. So I guess he was a sniper. I didn't ask much of his career. But his thought was, my friends that have been in the whole thing with me, they've already killed themselves. This one is mine. This is my way out. We did 1 session. That's all he ever needed. And he gave that bullet to his therapist and said, I won't be needing it. Wow. And she keeps in contact with me every so often and has told me that he's still on a really good path. And again, because it took him out of that loop of thinking suicide is the...
Because I've always kind of believed, because, I do Little Humans, right? And so we wire our brains and we connect everything.
Correct.
When we're children. And then that really sets the lens, so to speak, for the way we approach life. Mm-hmm. And then more and more it gets kind of, intertwined, I guess you can say. But you really only are able to see all of those things and experience all of those things through the way it was originally wired and the way you kind of see the world, so to speak. So it sounds like this gives you the ability to kind of wipe your lens and kind of see like a broader way of what life
is. Like you don't actually have to see it through this lens, and I call it the trauma lens because most of the time that's what it's from, like is, our experiences and our traumas. But it sounds like it's a way to finally wipe your lens.
Yeah. Very good. That's it. It kind of is. So we call it the default mode, what you're talking about. So we learn like this. Don't do this. You're going to die if you do this. I mean, even as parents, we're always like, no, you cannot do this. No, you cannot do this. And the way that we really want to teach our kids is by scaring them so they don't do that. So they don't run out in the road and get hit by a car. Yeah. So we're constantly teaching with fear. And that's what bureaucracy is, right? We're constantly leading with fear. If you don't do it this way, you're going to be sued. If you don't do it this way, we're coming after you. You have to say the right things, do the right things, or, there's consequences. So that's how we kind of grow up. It's called the default mode, and you're correct. It's all jumbled up, so you don't see the possibilities that can happen until you open that neuroplasticity. So yes, we can do this with therapy. It takes years and years. Or, this is what we've seen with ketamine-assisted psychotherapy. Also, what you're talking about, psilocybin, MDMA. There's a lot of different ways we can get there. And so, of course, when you're doing any kind of clinical stuff, you want to make sure it's legal. But I think the other things are so beautiful, and I would tell anyone to explore it if you have a chance to.
Yeah.
No, I find that amazing because I always, because I'm a huge champion for therapy, right? I think therapy is the most amazing thing. I think it changed my life. But because it helped to start rewiring some of those things. But I think it has its limits, right? Because I've been in therapy now for about 8 years, and I'm super proud of the healing that I've been able to do for myself. And, I'm super proud of all that. But it does take a lot of time, a lot of intentionality, a lot of kind of circling back, because again, I just feel like it's just wired a certain way. And so you go back to that default mode you're talking about, even when I know on one side of my brain, it's like, that doesn't make any sense. I know that's not true. I know that's not factual. Like my default mode is always generally the same. And so it makes me wonder if I had a way to kind of just open up that default a little more, if I wouldn't have to use so many of my therapeutic tools every day, all the dang time, because they work. Don't get me wrong, they do work, but I do still find myself constantly going back to what you call that default mode of, the way I see things or the way I process things or the way, and like I said, I've been able to, through therapy, kind of get the tools I need to work through those default thoughts and those, initial reactions that I will always have. Because I had somebody tell me one time, they were like, well, I feel like you don't have a lot of emotion. Like when you come back, I feel like you come back so put together. And I'm like, well, the truth is I worked really hard to contain that default reaction and process through it and use my tools and do all of that to come with a better response than my initial reaction. But the truth is my reaction is always the same. It really is. I mean, my response has become quicker, right? Like I can now curve those default reactions, but they're still there.
Yeah. And those are the little things with like CAP that you don't really notice at the beginning. So when we talk to people, they say, well, haven't noticed anything. And then we'll talk about their day and they say, well, I'm waking up, I don't need an alarm. I'm waking up at this time every morning. I'm doing this. Yeah, I'm not yelling at people. They start, then whenever they start talking, they're like,
I guess I have changed.
Yeah, yes. And because, yes, we are wired a certain way. And those are really hard to get through. So the tools are really good. It's just, it takes years and it takes a lot of help and knowing yourself to get through that. Yeah. Instead of thinking at things, there's another way of looking at CAP, and that's say your mom calls you, who's constantly on you, like, I just saw you, your hair wasn't made, or I don't know. I don't know how your mom is. And your reaction is always like, oh, she's on me all the time. And then something like CAP happens, and then you're thinking, oh, you can kind of relate to her. oh, I understand. This is your way of caring for me. And it's a different way of looking at things. And actually, it kind of turns it around on its head sometimes.
Yeah.
It's, and especially with kids, that's one of the things that people start saying, like, a lot of times whenever we've had this, and I'll bring up like things like, sexual assault during childhood. The sexual assault happened and they've been a victim of it and they're just so angry at the perpetrator. When something like this happens, it turns it around to where you connect to the perpetrator as another human and feel their pain. And it's kind of, I don't want to get into that here because it can be very you don't want to excuse any kind of behaviors. So I won't say it, but you can connect to a person in your own shadows and feel like their pain of what's happening to them. So you don't become a victim. You actually you have more strength and more confidence. And then you kind of understand and relate to people that can do these horrible things and know that you can do those horrible things as well. You wouldn't, but you could, and that part of you exists too, because we're all related. We're all part of the same system.
Yeah. No, and again, it's the rewiring part, right? Because it gives you this ability to perceive things through a different lens.
Correct.
And so I love that because I say that all the time. Like I even we call them shit goggles, but the girls and I are always like, okay, are you wearing your shit goggles? Do you think you should take those off? Because you have a lens that you can often revert to seeing through, and that's through our lived experience. It's the way we were wired. It's the way we have these, and being able to kind of take that step back and really just be like, okay, different lens. But that sounds like it helps you not default to the lens.
Correct.
Where you don't have to constantly every day be reminding yourself, do I have my shit goggles on? Like, am I seeing the world through my trauma lens?
Yes. Yeah.
I love it. So if I wanted to go see you at Be Well, how do I do that?
The easiest way is you start first appointment is just labs, and not because we don't want to dismiss anything. We're not treating numbers; we're treating the person. But getting the labs can tell us a lot of what's going on. So instead of somebody coming in and telling us X, Y, and Z, and then coming back and then having to tell us it again, then. Once we look at this, we pretty much can say, okay, this is what's happening, and tell us what else is happening. And then it just kind of makes it easier for us to connect when we have those labs before. So it's really easy. You could do it online. For those that don't have insurance, there's a cash price we can usually do it under insurance. There's a lot of different ways of doing it, though. So, yeah, if you just get online, it makes it really simple.
Amazing. And we will include in our video a link on how to get to you for any of our listeners that want to. And so final thoughts for anyone that's listening right now. Your audience is mainly probably women. What is the number one thing that you want them to take from you today?
Probably that, none of us are broken. There's a lot of things that come into the mix, dysfunction in the body that can happen at any time. So just balancing out the body can make you a whole new person where you feel like your best self. Again, I don't like to say anyone is lazy. I have a lot of women that just say, I'm just lazy now. And I say, lazy is not really a thing. I have one lady who always says, it's my superpower. It's not really a thing. There's your messengers are telling you can't get off the couch. So it's a signal. Why is this happening? And we're going to take a deeper look and find that out. Because if something is giving you passion, you can have all the energy you want to fulfill it. So that's what we have to find is that passion, that love for something, like your most joyous, fulfilling life, right? Yeah. And that's what it comes to.
Yeah. I love it. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Sorry, I got on my soapbox about
No, that's what this was for. Is we especially, like I said, I've been through that where it's like what does normal look like? And what I thought normal was is nowhere near what normal is. And so thank you so much for bringing some insight into this space. And thank you so much for watching. And if you have any, again, we're going to put some information for Ms. Sheila and Be Well, so that you can reach out if you feel inclined. And please like, share, comment, do all the things, and we'll see you next time.